Hi.
Hello.
Okay, good morning. It's San Francisco time, 8:30 morning, and it is Switzerland time, 5:30 in the late afternoon. Time for a Campari in Switzerland. Time for probably rather a coffee.
I'm having tea.
So I see participants are slowly joining us, but I will just get started now and kick off this new series that we're launching today with two very special guests, very special friends to swissnex. And I will first say a few words about why we're doing this, what we're trying to achieve with this. Then, of course, I will intro our two guinea pigs of the day. And then I will give also a few details on how we will be structuring today's session. So we're in here together for the next about 40 minutes. What we want to discuss really, and what we're trying to do with this series is, it's a whole new way for swissnex to do our mission of connecting the dots, bringing together people in surprising interdisciplinary conversations, discussing what the future might hold for all of us, but coming at it from different points of view, different disciplines, different backgrounds, and colliding those perspectives as we are now at this moment that is really a crossroads for all of us, actually. This time, the whole world is in this together. We are all in this moment of deep, deep transformation. The workplace, school, the way we learn, our families, the way we live, our businesses, factories, plants, economic systems, the way we shop, the way we eat, all of it right now, our social life is being disrupted. It's being deeply, deeply impacted by not so much the virus, but actually our political response to the virus and the way that we try to contain the virus. And it is a very interesting moment because in so many ways it has just accelerated trends that have been underlying for the past many years, slowly transforming the way that we live our lives and that we work. That we interact as well. And now all of a sudden we see ourselves in this like time capsule of having to learn it all really particularly fast and adapting to this new digital way of living, working, and interacting. And it is in so many ways a super interesting moment, not only to peek in a way into the future, but also to become active agents for this future that we want to create. And it's a really particular pleasure for us to kickstart a series of conversations here, and intimate, small conversations with always two people from completely different backgrounds, to discuss with them what this current moment represents for them, where they're at, very personally as well, what this means, how this impacts them, but also what this triggers in them in terms of their imagination for their fields, for what they work in, and for the world around us, and where we might be going together as we shape this new tomorrow, based on this moment that is the now, that is a very surreal now in many ways for many of us. So this is actually a bi-weekly series. We will be meeting with two different people every 2 weeks. We will be matching different backgrounds, as well as someone from California, someone from Switzerland, which is really what swissnex does. We are all about colliding perspectives and bringing people together from both sides of the continent, but also from different disciplines, different fields, different industries, and have those discussions in this format, the 30-minute discussion moderated by me, CEO of swissnex San Francisco, Gioia. And we will end up with about 10 minutes of Q&A that we will take from the audience in the chat function. So feel free, and I'm sorry, in the Q&A function, actually. So if you scroll down on your screen, you will see below there's a little sign with two little speech bubbles. And this is where you can ask your questions, and please do so throughout whenever you want. We will have a colleague of ours in the background, Nicola, who will be screening through those questions and then selecting some that we can discuss all the way towards the end of this conversation. You are all muted, which is, and I think Chris and Sophie would agree with me, a really strange experience for all of us. I think all three of us have spoken in many events, moderated many events, and it's such an important part of doing that is to read the audience, to feel the audience, to be in this sort of tacit conversation with an audience and sort of seeing what works. Are they there? Are they following me? Are they not? Adapting and changing your course. And here we are sort of in our little bubble. It's really just the three of us talking to each other, and we sort of know you guys are all following us. So this is a novel experience. It's an experiment. It's an experiment as much for us as it is for so many others out there. And it's yet one more step out of our comfort zone here as we are actually sort of taking our events and our conversations for the public online. So please, I'd love to hear from you in any way that you want. Shoot us an email or whatever, what you think and what you think we could do better as we're kicking off this new series. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining, and a special thank you to our two very special speakers. So two special speakers, one in San Francisco, or in the Bay Area, I should say, actually in Oakland,
West Oakland.
Currently in the swissnex space behind her. We'll get to that in a second. Sophie Lamparter and Chris Luebkeman, technically I believe in Zurich currently, but there with a background of the Bernese Alps, joining us from Switzerland. And we are in completely different parts of the world, yet we're all experiencing lockdown and transformation in our new homes. We are in so many ways mentally connected with each other, physically disconnected, but both of you are experiencing this as people away from your actual birthplace and your home. So you both have the Switzerland-California connection. Chris has lived for many years in the Bay Area, decided very recently actually to move to Switzerland, where he went to university many years ago, did his doctorate in architecture. Sophie, for her side, she has lived for quite a while now in the Bay Area, but really is from Switzerland and was at the beginning of this crisis still in Switzerland, decided to sit this all out in her new home here in California. So I think that's an interesting thing you have in common. You're sort of crossed paths and are experiencing this in a place away from home. Sophie is a connector, actually. She's a future thinker. They both have that in common. And she used to be deputy CEO at swissnex, but more recently, she actually started Switzerland's first female-led venture fund and incubator, Dart Labs, a very, very inspiring project that builds teams, builds people, and really elevates people to build a new and more human future through technology. So this is what Dart Lab does, and we are very excited to count on Dart Lab here at Pier 17 as one of our residents, and of course have a very, very close and long-standing relationship with Sophie, who has really immersed and dipped her feet in the future for many, many years. Chris, for his part, again, doctorate in architecture, but has a very, very varied background, built up the Foresight research and innovation team at Arup, a large engineering company, has been thinking and working and reflecting on the future for many years from the point of view of the built environment primarily, but has most recently actually decided to join the president's office at ETH in Zurich, to become and build their completely new position, which is a director of strategic foresight. So today, dipping his feet much more in the future of education, future of teaching, future of engineering also, and all sciences, and what will this all hold for us? So two very special speakers here joining me today. Thank you both for joining and being the guinea pigs in this new series. So I would like to start off. I would like to start off with both of you, just asking you right now, this new normal, what does this look like for you today? Sophie, can you tell us a bit about what this looks like for you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for having me. So nice to be here with you guys. Well, I'm home, which I guess most of us. I'm based here in West Oakland right now. We have lockdown for sure till the end of the month. So a little longer than already Chris in Switzerland. He was just telling us earlier that he went to a restaurant today, so we're still far away from that. For me, changed in terms of work-wise, you know, we've already kind of worked remote and virtual to a big extent. My co-founder, Ariana, she sits in Zurich. We have another partner sitting in Miami. Our startups are in Switzerland or here. So we have been using Zoom for a really long time. So that hasn't changed that much. What has changed is our whole idea was helping to bring Swiss and European entrepreneurs here to the US and help them connect and help them get visibility, potentially fundraise here. And this suddenly physically is not possible anymore. But what I realized, and what is, I think, a good learning from this, is it works also without actually physically traveling here. We've been connecting people virtually, we've been making introductions, we've run online events, even to other investors, which is very surprising. We haven't found yet an investor that actually wrote a check to the 2 startups that we're trying to raise money for, but we're getting ahead and ahead with people, taking second meetings, doing due diligence. So it seems like we could more or less do what we've been doing also virtually, which is something that very positive and made us happy, because in the first place it was like, oh my God, maybe our whole model is falling apart and we can't keep doing what we're doing. And then the other thing, I think what makes me happy is that we thought like, oh my God, we just kicked this off. We did our first fundraise in January, we did our first investments in February, and then March, Corona hit. But on the other hand, now looking back, we're actually quite lucky because we were up and running and we have this first new investment that we made, and all of them are. Oh, Gioia, you have a.
Thank you.
And all of them are in the right space. One is digital health, one is remote learning and education, and the third one is biodegradable bioplastic, home compostable. And all these 3 topics seem to be topics that are relevant, before Corona, during Corona, and after Corona. And I think that's for me the biggest learning. It's like, okay, this is really the things we have to focus on, the ones with long-term impact. Especially a crisis like that shows that in a very extreme way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, Sophie, how you kind of noted that a lot of your personal working methods you were already practicing before lockdown, that were in a way almost a practice for this, so that really didn't impact that much. And I think for me, I found that from a working method, being online on one hand was seamless and didn't matter that much as well. On the other hand, I sort of missed the unintended consequences of a random coffee.
Yes.
The sort of that, and that part of our business, which is also meeting people and having the conversations you didn't know you needed to have. Yes. So our time is much more curated now and planned, so we're able to continue, but it's not as unintentional.
Yeah, I've been thinking, also, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I've been thinking about exactly the same thing. Like now we're hosting an event, right? And it's the 3 of us speaking, but the interaction with the audience and the having a beer at the bar afterwards, where usually the most interesting stuff happens, right? It's where usually you maybe start a collaboration, or you meet somebody you haven't known that you were looking for, right? And this will be the big challenge. How are we translating that with technology? I don't think anybody has figured it out yet.
But to answer the question which I proposed, for me, this has really been a time of, I'd say, intense dichotomy, very intense loneliness, because I'm here by myself, and moved into a new apartment on the 1st of April with no furniture, and had to, and so that was, again, very lonely for many people. I think not just me, but also for many who had depended upon around the world, who lived in very small apartments, and their living room or their life was on the street or outside or with friends, and all of a sudden you're in one small room. And I'm very lucky, my room is bigger, but it's still that. But there's also a great togetherness, because just right now we're able to create a togetherness by bridging across the Atlantic and the continent through Zoom. Or I'm sure all of us on this call have had a number of Zoom or Teams meetings with a gallery of people, maybe 20, I don't know how many people, but then there's this, so you feel this virtual presence, so you're together in a different way. And as I said, I didn't have any furniture, but when my colleagues at HL found out, within about the next day, I got an email from one colleague and said, hey, I've got some furniture you can borrow. And then the university let me borrow a table and chairs. So, and literally in a week, I had furniture, which was really incredible. Just being together. And I think that's, and then as an institution, our president, Joel, tried with the rectorin, Sarah Springman, to convince many faculty members to go virtual, or at least to add a virtual component to their courses for a few years. I don't know how long, I wasn't here. But there was a lot of resistance. And after the 13th of March, they had 5 days to put 1,300 lectures and practical sessions online, and they did it. And everybody was virtual. All those who said they couldn't imagine doing it before, all of a sudden made that leap with great support from the institution. But that was interesting also, this extreme change from couldn't do it to, okay, we have to, so all right. I think this is something I'm experiencing, just things I didn't really know I needed or couldn't do, now I'm doing.
What do you think?
Last thing, I'll just say one more thing, Gioia, then I'll let you have it. The one thing I've found has been so fascinating for me is I've been here 2 months by myself, and I have 2 books I'm supposed to be writing. And you think it'd be a gift to be able to have this time. But I've found it incredibly difficult to sit down and write. It's been, and I went through the obsession of listening to the news every 15 minutes. I've learned more about viruses and what viruses do to our bodies than I ever wanted to know. I've done all these things except write my books. So, and it's really, but that struggle to motivate, and how I've learned how I really depend on others to co-motivate, and to feel that as well. And so that's been an interesting learning for me, is the necessity of that kind of togetherness as well, to help me push myself, which is a discovery, which isn't always a happy one, but it's a good one.
Yeah, that fully resonates with me. But one follow-up question to this, Chris, to both of you. What do you think how come that we are now able to do things that we thought we wouldn't be able to do before? Like, and I'm not saying staying home, because we have to. But the professors, for example, that now all of a sudden adopt technology, even though they're only encouraged to do so. What do you think in the change in our environment is that force that suddenly makes us do things that we before that thought we wouldn't be able to?
I'll give one spruch, one little saying, which, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think we've, in many ways, had to reinvent ourselves, or rediscover things that we didn't know we needed to know, from online shopping for everything, many who never touched online before, to discovering routines to help you keep sane, to exercise routines. So necessity is amazing, and shows the adaptability. Humans are unbelievably adaptable. I mean, otherwise we couldn't live everywhere from the Antarctic to the equator, or the Arctic, if we weren't so adaptable. And so I think this has been really a deep manifestation, an example of what we can do when we have to, right? And the question is, when we think of climate change and other challenges we see around the world, what does it take so that we can kind of create this collective action which we're all experiencing, instead of it being a negative thing, but as a positive? This is for me in German, Rätsel, the puzzle, the big one.
And then I think also you start realizing that first it works, and then secondly, oh, there are totally new possibilities now, right? We can have an event like this one where people zoom in from all over the world. That wasn't possible physically, right?
Totally.
On this, yeah, and same for you know, you're teaching a class. Okay, where do these teachers come from? They could come from everywhere, right? So I don't know. I think it's the first phase was like, oh, okay, let's make it work. And now I see people realizing, oh, this opens new possibilities.
That's beautiful. And I would love to know from both of you, what is the most important thing that you have learned now since this started in the past 2+ months? Learn for yourself, learn for your job, whatever it is about the world.
Go ahead, Sophie.
Start? Yeah, I guess for me, you said that before, Chris, the resilience of humans, right? I think for me, that's how important the resilience is and what it is, like being able to adapt, being able to keep moving forward, being able to even think further and like see, oh, there's these new possibilities and how can we change to that? I think that really touched me personally and also professionally, right? Also this idea that, you know, values have always been important to me and to a lot of people, but I think now values are even more important to all of us, right? And the more you keep, you know, holding on to your strong values, the better will it be for us, for society, for moving forward. I think those two things probably, yeah.
So, you know, for me, I think also two things. One, it's just been a reinforcement of the incredible importance of leadership. And it's leadership at all levels, and at a national level, a global level, a local level, and personal leadership. And that's why I say I sort of failed myself by not getting myself to motivate myself better to take advantage of the time, you know. And I see it, those leaders, and I will remain named or nameless, who have been very transparent and open and honest about what they understood, what they didn't understand, why certain actions were being taken, so that citizens felt informed and trusting that citizens would do the right thing when they were given clear information. So, I mean, that's one thing. It's reinforced it, and it made me very proud of those leaders who, in Switzerland, I think it's been amazing. It's exemplary leadership, and Angela Merkel has been amazing. You know, some people and so that's been one. And the other thing, it's also been a citizenship test. And what does it mean to be a good citizen? When you choose to go out or stay in, you choose to buy 16 boxes of pasta instead of the 2 you really need. Or, you know, so and also, who do you take care of? Who do you care for? And how important our understanding of citizenship is, and where we feel in our hearts that we are citizens of our world, of our planet, of our cities. You know, so to me, those two have made me think a lot. You know, that those two things.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would love to engage with you in a bit of a speculation, because this is in so many ways a moment that has demanded a lot of courage of all of us, courage in so many different fields, right? And it's staying positive and staying active and being an agent in this time, and not just a subject to our external environment, has been a challenge and requires courage. But I recently heard someone say that the one thing we shouldn't forget, that this is a time that really requires the courage of imagination, the courage to imagine and rethink the world that we want to live in and shape this together. And I would love to hear from both of you what your wildest imagination is for this post-COVID future. But not only that, I also want to know how you personally want to be agents and will adapt and change your behaviors to be the agents that create that future. Sophie.
Yeah. Well, I do hope we're not going back to the old normal, right? There is a lot of things that today's society, or let's say 2 months society ago, wasn't doing the way I think we should be doing it. Like inequality is one example, right? This crisis shows us now that how fragile everything is, right? We as humanity, but also the planet at large, right? And a society is only as strong as is weakest member, right? And we're feeling that right now, right? I can only stay healthy if my nurses are healthy, if the Amazon warehouse worker is healthy, right? And I truly hope that this realization is going to have an impact on our individual decisions as well as on a government level. And what you said, Chris, before about trusting the government, right? I am in the US right now, and here there's a lot of distrust, and people are almost used to that, right? It's you know, everything, like the political parties are doing a business, the public healthcare is a business, and I truly hope that this country understands that we need a lot more, that we need you know, a society that takes care of each other and that collaborates between the public sector, the private sector. Yeah, so that's my hope, large scale. For me personally, you said what I'm trying to do or what my own impact is. So yeah, we moved recently a bit in the venture capital world, right? Investing in startups. For me, very clearly, I do only want to invest in startups or companies that have technologies that truly have a positive impact, way beyond just generating money or a good business, right? That help us improve our lives, that help us improve how we deal with the environment, that makes us healthier, stronger. And also, I think the whole idea of private investing, right, is an investor shouldn't be just somebody that deploys money and waits and becomes a silent shareholder that gets richer and richer over time. No, an investor should be somebody that helps a company to grow, that helps them build, that becomes part of their extended team. And so I'm hoping what we're doing with Dark, we can change that system a little bit from the inside.
That's great. It's a great aspiration, and I'm sure you will be successful, Sophie.
Thank you, Chris.
You know, Gioia, for me, when I actually think quite a lot about what you said with courage and whether this is really truly a reset or will we return. And you asked for courage and hope, so I will land on the reset side. History does not really help that, because usually if you look at all the curves in our modern society, even after all the 9/11 and the last 2009, we all get right back after about 6 months to a year back on the same trajectory, which we have been. So it's a concerning one, because our planet can't afford us to continue on that consumption curve as we lift people out of poverty. So we have to figure out another way, which Sophie just mentioned, is how do we really look deeply at equity? And do I really need to have 275 rolls of toilet paper in my garage or not, you know? So I look for look more towards saying respect, and hoping for we have a world in which we're respecting nature and the systems she provides us to live on this planet, that we respect the next the needs of the next 7 generations. Not just the next 7 weeks or 7 months, but the next 7 generations. And so, excuse me, so that we really can look back and say we were the best ancestors that we could ever be. And we were proud of all the decisions that we made, the actions we took. And one of the things I said when I moved here to Zurich, I decided I was not going to take, if you will, private, I was going to take public transportation, öffentlichen Verkehr, any place I could. Means I was going to train everywhere. And I had no idea the unintended consequence of that decision. Meant that it took 12 hours to take a train to Berlin for an 8-hour meeting and 12 hours to get back. It would have taken me almost 20 hours to get to Barcelona to give a 1-hour talk. So, but these are actually the real consequences of decisions which we have to make. I could have flown. It would have been easy. But actually, in order for us to get to where we need to be, we have to make hard decisions and we have to live our values. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, you are a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. And then live with it. Decide if you want to live with that or not. And so therefore, for me, I'm really hoping that we will be respectful of each other and of those who have, so little. That's my big hope.
How do you think we could, make sure that there is going to be a change after this? I'm a little bit worried that, now things are opening again and everybody's, yes, back to normal.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas?
So I mean, humans are storytellers. We actually love stories. And I think, and we all know that bad news travels and is stickier than good news. And so it's what we need is to create some stories about the circular economy, about a more just world, which are compelling and not just fairy tales, but trying to really look at these systemically and create the stories which are worth people saying, yeah, that's actually really great. And so therefore, I think the Sustainable Development Goals are things which everyone should really take a look at, and because they're pretty good, frankly. The 160 something targets within the 17 goals, and if we could really achieve that, that would be pretty awesome, right? And so therefore, I think stories around that, and then as Gioia was saying before, and maybe it's like we each have to walk our own path and make our own decisions and how we do the little things. Because if you believe in democracy, then you believe that your vote counts and your vote matters. And I do believe in democracy. So therefore, it's up to me to vote for that better world. And this, I think all of us can do that by what we choose to do every day, and I fail all the time with this, but I try. I'm trying to be more conscious with it.
We have to hold ourselves accountable, right? And make commitments to ourselves and to this planet. Now, when it seems like everything is moving and all the pieces are moving and everything is changing. So this is the moment to make those commitments in so many ways.
But I think the other part to Gioia is you have to acknowledge, and I think we said, this is complex. It's not simple, right? And I was having a great argument with someone over the weekend where I said, isn't it wonderful that the consumption has dropped? That Target has canceled its entire summer line, has only ordered half of the clothes for the fall because they don't expect to sell as much stuff. I said, how awesome is that? That our planet is getting a little bit of a breather and no flights. And what she says, yeah, but you know what? All those t-shirts are what lifted millions of people out of poverty. Mm-hmm. So by us not buying all that stuff, does that mean that we're going to put them all back in poverty? So if we don't kill the planet, so it becomes a really interesting conundrum.
Absolutely. And I think there needs to be systemic change.
Exactly.
In the current system, these things are not going to work out if we just cut one thing. But I mean, this is fascinating, but I really want to get to some questions from the audience and give them the chance to hear you respond to their specific concerns or thoughts. So I'll read one here. This whole experience resets many of my default behavioral patterns. What changes have you made in life that you cannot imagine not continuing in the post-COVID future?
That's a
Yeah, mine is, I spend a lot more time at home than before. I'm a very like social butterfly, right? I was always out and about. I thought I need a city, you know, just for cultural stimulation and exchange. And I actually realized that I'm quite happy with a lot less, right? I mean, everybody's posting about how they're baking bread now. I was making lamps. I was cooking a lot more. I became much more creative. I think like doing things at home. I started gardening more than I used to. And suddenly, maybe my dream is not a cool loft in the city anymore. Maybe it's actually a country house. And I think for being closer to nature, having a place where you can restore and just be with your creativity and your thoughts. And that for me personally, I think has changed. I always thought I need the city. I like to visit it, but I don't think I need it anymore. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think that's great. And it's a great discovery.
Maybe it's also age. I don't know.
I would not. I will not even begin to answer that question. It's a fascinating question, Cameron. And for me, it's been almost the other way. You know, I can't wait to go back into the office. Actually, I'm pretty much tired of being in this room, and I can't wait to go into restaurants. So the things I can't imagine not continuing is very little, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this is, you know, because I put the question right before it, are my days as effective as before? And the answer is no, which I find really fascinating to me, that I've discovered I need that routine of leaving this place. So this is my home, where I don't really want to have Zoom conferences and things. I like that. I found the necessity for me for a little more for that segregation. And so I'm looking forward to being able to redesign that a little bit. And I had no idea I needed that as much as that separation. I already kind of thought about it, but
how this time gave us the opportunity to discover new things about ourselves, right?
Yes, I
you
take that
didn't
as
know you needed people, and Sophie didn't know she wanted a more isolated.
Survive with less. I do miss my friends, and I do miss a really good hug, you know. That's definitely
So let's take one more before we close here. So I like this question. So Chris made the point about the importance of leadership. Many heretofore mediocre leaders may find themselves motivated by the crisis to step up, but they don't really know how. So do you have any thoughts, both of you, on how we can support them to make that shift? And I think for you, Sophie, you work with startup founders, CEOs of small startups, so you experience it in that way. And Chris, you work with professors and in your environment, a lot of leaders around you. What are your thoughts on that?
So I can give you one, and I think what I would want to do is sort of pull apart the word mediocre, because there's many different leadership styles and different types of leaders in different situations. And I think the crisis shows you what kind of a leader you are. And I think and then the question is, what kind of a leader do you wish to be? So you get a mirror slapped up in front of you pretty hard. And, you know, it took me about 6 weeks to figure out I was failing myself and got my act together. And so I think that was more of when you say, how do we support them? I would say direct conversation and say, hey, you know, I'm with you, you know, or we need you. You know, we need you to step up. We need your leadership. And and also to help them see the way they could go. I think that's the other part, is not look at this with scorn, but say, okay, this is what trying to help guide the expectations to lay those out. And I'm not necessarily a great leadership coach, and there are many people who are, but one of the things I've started doing, I had a couple conversations with some of the junior faculty here who were just looking for a way to talk about how they were managing their research teams. And again, it's fascinating to hear how one team, this female professor they plank every morning at 9 o'clock, and they have a plank coffee or a plank meeting. So they all plank together. So they're going, right? Up to 3 minutes they plank, and it's like, okay, and it's a thing for them. So to join this conversation, so they feel like there's this togetherness. And another one, they literally have coffee together every day. And so there's just different ways, to try to help the leaders be leaders. I think that's what I would say.
I love that, because I think often we think of leadership as something that happens in isolation and is the burden of the leader. But leadership is a dialogue, it's a conversation. It's a reaction and a response to what you get from your outside world and from the people that you're supposed to lead. So I think putting the accountability on both is extremely important. I think no leader in isolation can figure out all the answers unless you have that feedback and those inputs from people. So I'm sorry, without wanting to cut you off, Sophie, but I want to be respectful of the time. And I actually do want to end with one last very quick question. So I also want to briefly sort of summarize what I heard in this conversation. And I think a lot of really meaningful sort of sound bits that stick with me. We talked about isolation versus togetherness in this time. We're experiencing both in a very surreal and strange way, but we're experiencing both of these. We talked about resilience and adaptability, which is really something that is required of all of us, but also beautifully flourishing right now as we look around and see how humanity is dealing with this. You Chris, talked about the importance of leadership, but then also the importance of citizenship. All of us in this together, having to build the reality around us and having to build that future and making ourselves accountable for the choices we make, and understanding that every voice counts, every vote counts, but also every act counts. Because we're all, the system around us is the sum of the pieces, and we are the pieces. Yep. Respecting nature and the next 7 generations, the importance of that, the world that we live in, and really, really exerting and living and showing that respect for an incredible world that we are all travelers in and all visitors of. And how can we take that forward? And then also the importance of our interconnectedness as humans in this very moment, going through this together. So these are some of the sound bites I take with me. And I want to just take this back to the you level and the me level. Last question, and thank you, Chris, for this one. But in really one sentence, what is it that gives you joy right now in these days?
Well, I can answer that one very easily. It gave me and gives me great joy to be able to go into a restaurant. No, I tell you, it gives me joy to think of the potential power that we have as citizens to really make our own future. And it's actually, I'm very excited. That gives me joy to think about that, this moment to reset.
Sophie?
Nature has been giving me a lot more joy than before. Going for walks. I'm enjoying my daily bike rides. I'm enjoying my work in the garden. I think too, I always had the appreciation for it, but now you see the necessity, right? And how, for me that, And also a little bit like Chris, I think we're both people who like change, right? And you like to speculate, and I'm actually quite excited that this might be a monumental moment in time, right? That we'll never go back to. So I'm excited to see what comes, actually. I'm worried, of course, economical impact and all these things will be tough for a lot of people, but I also think it's the one-time chance to make something different and better for all of us. Yeah.
I love that. And I think, I mean, personally, for me, it has been a joy to be here with you and actually sharing on that conversation and dive a little bit into this world of very personal experiences and thoughts during this time. So that gives me a lot of joy, but to connect it to your joy, I hope next time it's over dinner in nature.
Yes, a picnic. Yes.
Wrap it up and also remind all, so thank you everybody who joined from afar. I only see a number, I don't see faces. That's of course sad, but I hope all of you got a little tiny bit of inspiration out of this conversation, maybe a little hint that will help you change your behaviors or think about your own agency in this time of change. And I hope that you will join us for future conversations of the same kind with different types of speakers, and we will definitely make sure to keep up this super high level of really interesting speakers here in this series. So thank you very much. Big thank you to Chris, big thank you to Sophie, big thank you to
Gioia.
people in the background who are always in any event, and we know that the most important people to run an event smoothly, and now we can see them even less. So thank you, Natalia, thank you, Nicola, for running the platform and making sure it all works smoothly.
Thank you, Gioia.
Thank you.
Everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe. Ciao.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, Chris.
Ciao, Sophie.
Ciao, Joy.